Hi everybody. In today's video we're going to talk about the fourth pillar out of a series of 5 pillars of mental well-being. We're going to talk about the fourth pillar, which is purpose. Now this comes from a meta-study, which is a study of other studies, kind of a survey of the research in the last couple of decades about what brings about mental health, what brings about happiness and well-being in people's lives. This is sort of like the summary of positive psychology. And it comes from the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And this pillar is the pillar of purpose, and in some ways it's a very, very closely tied to spiritual questions and spiritual issues, but we're going to be treating that as a separate category later. You might have heard the quote by Mark Twain. He says, "The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why." And purpose is all about why. Now, think of these questions would be the questions of purpose. They're kind of all related, but there's some distinctions to them. Why am I here? What is my mission in life? What am I here to do, to accomplish? Who am I here to serve? What's this all for? Get up and go to work. Do things for the house, help my kids. What's the purpose of this all? And also, what really matters? How do I get significance and meaning out of this? These are ultimately spiritual questions, I suppose. But we do want to treat spirituality as a separate category, and it is also true that that some people are trying to figure out or trying to answer these kinds of questions in ways that don't involve any kind of transcendent meaning or purpose. In other words, it's all just about myself, and I kind of make this up myself, and I figure out a way to make life work just focusing on myself. And I personally believe that's an unhealthy way to live. But once again, people are going to make these choices and think these things through in whatever way matches their worldview. But again, we'll talk more about that next week. And also, let's be honest, a lot of people in our society today spend a lot of time and energy to not have to deal with these questions. In other words, we struggle with these questions, and so we find ways of distracting ourselves, distancing ourselves from having to deal with them. Or maybe we distract ourselves and distance ourselves from the unhappy answers we're coming up with to these questions. So this is where addictions come in. Anything that might distract us: drugs, alcohol, food, sex, whatever. Just ways to cope with the reality that we don't have good answers to those questions. Years ago, the existentialist philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said that he who has a good answer to why can bear almost any how. And that is borne out by the research that the Center for American Minds comes up with, where there's a strong connection between what they would call resilience, or the term that's used today, resilience, being able to deal with stress and anxiety and challenging circumstances, and be able to sort of navigate through them, be able to bounce back quickly from them. Very closely tied in a variety of studies. You can look at it if you'd like to, pick out the studies themselves. I'll put a link in the show notes, but studies that show a link between the higher a sense of purpose, the bigger the why, the more resilient people are with the challenges that they face, the more they're able to stick to things. And again, just intuitively, this makes sense. When we have an understanding of the meaning and purpose of the things that we're going through, when we have some kind of connection to something that's sort of like bigger than ourselves, that enables us to sort of deal with challenges and frustrations and setbacks that come our way. And it also just makes the whole journey itself more enjoyable, or we have more peace along the way. George Bernard Shaw has a challenging word about this, and I think it's worth reminding ourselves of. Again, this is a quote that's gone around a lot. You might have heard it, but he says, "This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being thoroughly worn out before you are thrown on the scrap heap, the being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy." And again, as harsh as it might seem, and we're not trying to be mean about this, but isn't it true that there are some people that it just revolves, everything seems to revolve around them and always seem to be unhappy about this, that, or the other thing. When we are connected to something that's bigger than ourselves, when we're devoted to a purpose that is significant, that enables us to transcend so many of these things that trip a lot of people up. Okay, so how do we get in touch with this sense of purpose? How do we begin to answer those kinds of questions? How do we get clarity about this? So I have a couple of things that I want to recommend. First, I want to recommend this book that I wrote. It's been out a few years now, a couple of years, and Leaving Your Mark Without Losing Your Mind. There's 7 sections to it, which each section deals with one of the challenges that gets in our way when we're trying to live a life of meaning and purpose. But the first section especially talks about the challenge, the problem for many people is not so much that we don't know what our purpose is or aren't able to grasp it. We tend to lose sight of it. And I think that's the first thing that I'd say about this is that, really, I don't think it's that hard. I've taught a number of classes about this on this topic, and I've not had pushback on this from anyone. That what we say is, if you just let yourself think about it, if you just get quiet, we have an intuitive awareness of purpose. And the challenge that we have is not so much that it's not available to us, it's just that we get so busy we lose sight of it. So another part of this that might be helpful for people is sometimes we can lose sight of it if we're just trying to focus on something that's really grandiose. If we let go of our grandiosity and just sort of look around at what's happening around us, we can get in touch pretty quickly with a sense of purpose and meaning in that. And then also, just if we stop distracting ourselves and let ourselves focus on the question, the answers will come to us, I believe. So then that gets us to number 4, which I think is kind of the key here, is to take some time to do this, devote some time to this, and start asking that question, and just in the silence of your heart, when you have again, getting away from distractions, and you start to think about this, you pray about this, it becomes clear. And I do with so many of these things, and particularly here, I encourage people to let yourself ruminate, but then also write stuff down to get some clarity to it, and then be able to come back to it, a week later or a month later or whatever, and to keep coming back to what you've written down. And again, you'll find more clarity, you'll find some distinctions, you'll find things shifting. But if you just take time for this, I'm almost ready to guarantee it will come. Clarity will come, and an answer will come. And then that brings us to the fourth or the fifth thing that I would say is, I do think it's also helpful at somewhere along this journey, not right away, but maybe after you've had some time to think about it and write it down, then talk to some other people and get some clarity from other people. Find out what might resonate for them as far as what they see in you. And you also might get some ideas of things that you hadn't thought about, maybe out of your own insecurity. You don't see this as a possibility, but other people can. So talk about this with some other trusted people. All right, so that's all I'm going to say in this video about purpose. We're going to talk about the fifth and final pillar in our next video. I encourage you to sign up for this, to subscribe to this channel. And I ask for this because when you do that, then that will bring up new videos in your YouTube feed as they become available. And I'm hoping to get a certain number of visitors or subscribers, and then I'm going to be able to do to have a special name for this channel and so on. But have a great week, and we'll be talking to you next week.